And we're joined by our friend, Dr. Brian Salvatore, chemistry, physics professor, LSUS. Doc, I thank you for joining us this morning. We're going to talk water with you a minute. You mind?
Yes, good morning. Good morning, Aaron and Dan.
The brain-eating amoeba in Bossier raises the questions of the chlorine burn that is going on now. Erin Brockovich and her whole team is saying this chlorine burn is dangerous. The water is not safe to drink. State health officials say that's absolutely, they disagree completely with her. Where do you fall in this argument? Somewhere in between? Or are you kind of leaning on the teeter-totter of the Brockovich scale?
Well, you know me, Aaron. By now, I do draw attention when I think that things are dangerous, but I also like to be practical and to look for long-term solutions that are going to be safe. So I do think I'm somewhere in the middle on this. I just wanted to say that chlorine by itself is not the bad thing that in our water that people may make it out to be. People may associate chlorine with the poison gas of World War I, but chlorine in very low concentrations is something that we can deal with, our gut bacteria can deal with. And so the chlorine itself is not the issue. It's the way that chlorine reacts with organic matter that is present in surface water.
What is it about inhaling this stuff that we've been reading the warnings? Is it something that's coming out in the shower?
Well, yeah, that's right. So the byproducts that get produced when chlorine is added to surface water, and we get our water in Bossier, we get it from the Red River. In Shreveport, we get it from Cross Lake. At this time of the year, with the water being warm at the end of the summer, you have very high levels of natural organic matter. And chlorine reacts with that and makes these things that are toxic, carcinogens in very low amounts. We're talking 80 parts per billion. That's like 80 cents out of $10 million, a very small amount, or 1 second out of 2.5 years. So the concern is the toxicity of these things that could be produced by having to use the chlorine. And we put ourselves in that situation because we don't remove this organic material well enough out of our water supply. And that's something that we really need to take a look at over the long term.
Is there another alternative, Doc?
Yeah. Oh, pardon me?
Is there another alternative other than the chlorine?
Yeah. Well, definitely longer term, it's something where we should try to address the source of our concern, which is the reaction between chlorine and the organic material. Now, the other alternative, which is used, and this is what Ms. Brockovich was upset about, is that instead of removing the sediment from our water, what we're doing is using a substitute for chlorine called chloramine.
Mm-hmm.
And this does not produce those byproducts, those trihalomethanes in very high amounts. So in that respect, it's safer. What chloramine is not good at is killing this Naglieri falari, and that's the problem, the brain-eating amoeba. So that's the reason why we got ourselves in this situation. We're thinking expediency, and if we have a problem, we'll deal with it short term, just throw some chlorine in there, do a chlorine burn, as they call it. But then that's creating the same problem over again with the trihalomethane. So we've got ourselves in a situation where we're darned if we do, we're darned if we don't. And how do we end this cycle and get ourselves out of this situation? And we have to look at our water supply, and we have to use other methods to get the organic matter out of there, such as sedimentation, carbon filtration. And big cities have done this, such as Cincinnati.
But it's costly, right? It costs a lot of money, right? A lot more.
Well, it would cost. There would be an engineering cost. There would be a materials cost for carbon filtration. But in my opinion, it would be worth it. It would not be an extravagant amount of money. But all things that you get what you pay for. The problem is long term. Are we going to be saving human lives? And the answer is yes. Now, short term, I don't think people should be panicked. You were talking about your bath over the next few weeks. This is not a concern that's going to change the cancer rates dramatically just because of one chlorine burn. It's not a good thing, but it's not a real thing to be panicked about.
Is there anything I can do if I'm a Bossier resident to ease the? Can I put a filtration system on my water fountain? Is there soda ash or something I can put in my bath water to get rid of the? Is there anything about you would advise Bossier residents, or if you were on Bossier water, you would do to the water to make it a little bit safer?
Well, yes, your drinking water, you could let it sit it's probably best to let it sit overnight in a refrigerator in a pot, or you could boil it. And the boiling is just getting rid of the chlorine. But you're not going to get rid of these trihalomethanes. That's the problem. So these are going to be present. I would like to know every day what their concentrations are. So I hope that the city is transparent so that people know, are we over this 80 parts per billion amount? And it's something that everybody deserves to know. Now, if we are for a day or two, is it going to be a disaster? No. But it's something that we need to know.
What's the question we should ask the city? We want to see the results of your, what's that word? We can't say that big word, Brian.
The trihalomethanes, the total trihalomethane content.
We should ask for that, right? And see the number.
And I wish it would be reported on a daily basis. The test can be done. I had friends who've done it with the Shreveport water system. It costs a couple $100, but we're talking a municipality here. So, yes.
Well, we will definitely ask for that and see if there's any possible way they can do it. They have not provided anyone to speak with us today. They just issued a statement, and that concerns me a little bit. We are going to have later on this morning, Doctor, Aaron Brockovich's water guy, Bob, I never can say his name right, but he's joining us at 8:40. What would you like to ask him? Do you think they're causing a panic, or do they like to cause a panic? Do you have that question?
Well, I know Ms. Brockovich has a huge network of experts, so I would like to tune in. It's a few minutes before my class, but I'm going to plan to listen.
Okay.
I don't think they're deliberately trying to cause a panic. And I think in her blog post, what she was emphasizing is, why are you putting yourself in this situation by going back and forth from chloramine to these chlorine burns? Think long term. And maybe in her emotion, she may have created somewhat of a panic, but I don't think that was her intention. She's frustrated because she's been saying this now for almost a decade.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Brian Salvatore, LSUS chemistry professor, physics professor. Thanks for your time this morning, Doc.
You're welcome.